Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We are incredibly excited to host you all for our first virtual Q&A, a partnership between the Posse Foundation's Veteran Program and the Warrior Scholar Project. All our student veterans featured on the panel today are current Posse Veteran Scholars on their respective campuses or remote, and also participated in one of the Warrior Scholar Project's academic summer boot camps. We are looking forward to hearing more about each of their journeys from the military to their current schools throughout our time together in this session.
So for our Q&A today, we're going to start off with some introductory questions from our moderators. The moderators today are myself, Derek, and Anthony, and we'll have a chance to introduce ourselves here in a moment. But we really want to have these introductory questions and then open it up for you. So as we're having these conversations, please drop your questions in the chat. And at the end of our structured Q&A, we definitely want to get as many of your questions answered as possible. You can actually have them pointed to one of the panelists individually, or a collection of the panelists, open up to all of them. So just please kind of let us know the question and if it's open to anyone, or if there's someone in specific that you want to hear from.
Great. Well, to start us off, Derek and I will give brief introductions of ourselves, on who we are and the organizations we represent. So my name is Anthony Linkwitz. I'm an art history major at Dartmouth College. I'm currently studying remotely from Southern California, and I'm about halfway through my junior year. I served 6 years of enlistment in the U.S. Coast Guard, primarily working as an information systems technician. In 2017, the year I transitioned back to civilian life, I went through Warrior Scholar Project's program at the University of Michigan. I loved it and benefited so much from the experience that I decided I wanted to be a part of it and give back to my fellow veterans and to the program itself. And so I interned as a humanities fellow in the summer of 2019. Back to you, Derek.
Thank you. My name is Derek O'Geist. I was an enlisted member of the U.S. Army, served 11 years. And like Anthony, I was also in information technology. I got out in 2015, and the only thing that I knew to do to support my family was to go back to school and use a GI Bill. And then I said, I'll figure it out. However, didn't realize that I would have emotional, physical, and mental challenges as a result of my service in the military to contend with. So I did college the hard way and just did brute force and beat the book over my head. It wasn't until I found out about Warrior Scholar Project and I attended Warrior Scholar Project in the summer of 2019. It completely changed my life. I graduated from the University of Miami this past spring with a bachelor's degree in political science. This past summer, in the summer of 2020, I also, kind of like Anthony, I wanted to give back from my experience I had with Warrior Scholar Project, and I was an humanities fellow this past summer. And most recently, I have been a part of the Warrior Scholar Project team as the alumni engagement and outreach fellow. So I'm looking forward to having a chance to ask our questions and help moderate and get things kicked off. Anthony?
Awesome. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Posse Veterans Program, they identify, train, and support veterans like myself, Derek, and everyone else on this panel as they pursue their bachelor's degrees from top colleges and universities. The schools that partner with the Posse Veterans Program agree to accept 10 veterans each year to attend as a cohort or a veterans posse. Before starting on campus, each cohort goes through pre-collegiate training in New York City. It's a 1-month experience that allows scholars to build relationships before they start on campus. Once at school, a faculty mentor is provided to support scholars with registering for classes, building connections on campus, and whatever else they may be seeking guidance for. Throughout this time, scholars also have access to Posse's extensive career program. This includes in-person and virtual workshops, internship opportunities and connections, career coaching, and full-time employment opportunities. Scholars have interned and now work for places such as Goldman Sachs, Amerivet Securities, Bank of America, Arts in the Armed Forces, PwC, the Smithsonian, various elected officials, and many, many others. Upon graduation, all scholars are also connected to the Posse Foundation's alumni network, which has grown to over 7,000 industry leaders and professionals. I'm sure you'll hear more about Posse from our panelists as they share about their own individual journeys and experiences. But for those of you who may be interested, I'm happy to share that Posse's application is currently open now. More information will be dropped in the chat later, and we'll also be able to share more details at the end of the Q&A. Derek?
Thanks, Anthony. So I want to share a little bit more about Warrior Scholar Project. So Warrior Scholar Project is a veterans-focused and veterans-driven organization in terms of providing enlisted service members with the skills to be successful in whatever their academic journey may be by providing 1 week intensive academic boot camps. There are 3 particular tracks that we host. There's humanities, which focuses on reading and writing skills, the fundamental skills you need to be successful in college. We also have a STEM program, which focuses on mathematics, problem sets, and physics. And then lastly, we have a business and entrepreneurship track that focuses on group projects, case studies, and really giving you an access to what it's like to attend a business program. We have over 20 host institutions that provide the professors the infrastructure to host our 1 week intensive boot camps. And the other really great thing, as Anthony and I have both mentioned, is that alumni from our programs serve as mentors throughout that week and help facilitate and make sure that as veterans, you have someone who understands exactly where you're at and also have examples of where you want to go. A lot of our alumni, we have over 1,400 alumni so far, and they are at some of the top institutions across the country. But we also have alumni that spread across the entire spectrum of academic institutions, from community colleges all the way up to some of the Ivy Leagues. So no matter where you're at, if you're thinking about school, if you're not sure about school, if you're in school, Warrior Scholar Project will equip you with the necessary skills to be successful, no matter what your journey may be and what you decide to do. Upon completion of our 1 week boot camp, you do become part of our alumni network and you have access to different seminars and sessions to continue to support you as you make your way through your transition or any pursuits that you have academically. It's now time that I'd like to introduce our panelists. We will first begin with introductions so you all know who is featured here today. I'll ask each of our panelists to share their names, their MOS, branch of service, where you did your WSP experience, and your current school and major. So we'll start off with Jordan because he has such an enticing background. Jordan.
Thanks. So my name is Jordan Arikula. I'm from California. I was a satellite communications operator maintainer for the U.S. Army. I served a little over 4 years. I did my WSP experience at Notre Dame when it was the humanities week, and I'm currently a sociology major and civic engagement minor at Wesleyan University in Connecticut.
Thanks, Jordan. I appreciate it. Alexander, you're next.
Yeah, so I'm Alex Barney. I was in the Marine Corps for 6 years as a communications Marine. Right now, I'm a second year at the University of Virginia on the pre-commerce route, and I did WSP's STEM program at Yale in 2018.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And last but not least, Adam.
Yes, hello, Adam Vasquez. I was in the Army for 4 years. I was 12 Delta, which is an engineer diver, but we like to say deep sea diver sounds a little bit cooler. I did my WSP through Williams College, but this year, with the world situation, we did it online, which was still a great experience. Currently, I'm at Vassar College, and my major is undecided, but I plan on doing environmental studies, or as Vassar College calls it, environmental sciences.
Fantastic. Thanks, Adam. Like I mentioned earlier, for some of us some of you who might have joined recently, we do have one more panelist, but she's currently in class, so we're just waiting for her to finish and wrap up her class. But once she becomes on board, we'll go ahead and make sure that she has an opportunity to introduce herself. But for right now, we'll just start diving into some of the questions. Anthony?
Okay, great. Yeah, so let's kick it off with question number 1. So to share a little bit more, I'll ask each of you to give us some insight as to your journeys into higher education. Thinking back to when you first enlisted, did you always know college was in your future? How did you start to explore your options for college when you were enlisted? And what were some of these resources you utilized to get to where you are today? Alex, would you mind kicking us off?
They're testing the fire alarm. Can somebody go first?
Sure, Adam, do you mind jumping in there?
Yeah, no problem. There's always these issues. But yeah, so I graduated high school in 2012. After that, completely unsure. Ended up going to community college. And I'm a first year or first generation college student in my family. So my family really no idea about college. It's just go there and get good grades. That was really it. That's all I got, which was the best they could do. Then I got my associates in 1 year. And after that, I went to a 4-year school in New York, Stony Brook University, where I completely bombed, basically. It just wasn't a right fit. And I did not do well there. And then I worked around a little bit for a year. After 21, I said, all right, walked into the recruiter's office, got enlisted. And but I enlisted in a job that I enjoyed. Like I said, it was a pretty challenging job, the diver. But then through my years in the Army, I knew that I wanted to do something else. Actually, I was very set on never going back to college. I just didn't. I wanted to do a different path. But then I found actually the Posse program, and that was huge. What they were all about, which was the people and the network. And I actually got a little bit lucky, and through the Posse program, I ended up going to Vassar College. I was very grateful, very thankful to get the scholarship, and that's where I am now at Vassar College.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. Katie, since you just joined us, we're so happy to have you. Would you mind giving a brief introduction about yourself, including your MOS, where you go to school, which branch you were enlisted in? And then we just asked the panelists questions concerning your journey to higher education. So if you knew you always wanted to go to college, the options you explored while enlisted for college, and some of the resources you utilize. I know it's a lot, but if you could, that'd be
yeah. No, and I'm sorry to join you a little bit late. I had
Sure.
some connectivity issues. Finally got my internet working, so thank you for your patience. Yeah, so for everyone watching, my name's Katie Puckett. I'm currently a second-year undergraduate at the University of Chicago. I'm majoring in comparative human development, and I separated from the United States Navy in 2019. I served as an Arabic linguist and also an instructor up at a training command for my final tour of duty. I deployed to Afghanistan in 2013, and I had a deployment to the Mediterranean in 2012 as well. Talking about sort of what brought me to here today as a panelist, I did Warrior Scholar Project in 2017 at Syracuse University, and I had found out about WSP just basically through Facebook. I found a Facebook post that someone had mentioned it, and I thought, what is this program? I've never heard of it. It sounds incredible. So I signed up. I think it was already actually past the application deadline point. But I was able to call them and be like, hey, please, I would love to go. I just found out about it. And they were really nice and squeezed me into Syracuse. And I remember taking a train out there. And it was just the most incredible experience to be around other veterans who are not only already out or thinking about getting out, but were passionate about higher education and succeeding and showing their intellectual capacity and sort of following their dreams in a pivot, if you will, from the military. So I knew I was in the right place at that point in 2017. And I knew that I wanted to go forward and do higher ed at a great school. And that's what also got me into Posse. Do you want me to tell my Posse story now, or should I wait for later on that one?
Oh, sure, you could touch on it. Was it something you knew about before or after WSP? And was this something, when you thought about college while in the military or before, did you consider the schools that Posse was partnered with, or were there other schools on your mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually learned about Posse while I was at WSP, and I happened to be sitting next to our first day of classes at Syracuse, a guy who had been admitted. His name is Logan Ragsdale, and he's a fellow Posse vet. He had been admitted to Vassar through the Posse program, so he told me all about it, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. I remember he had just gone through all the interview process and everything. And I thought, gosh, I don't know if I can make it. I don't know if they would select me for that. But, fast forward a couple years and I was fortunate enough to be selected for Posse. But luckily, having known about it prior to my separation date and when it was time for me to apply, I knew that there were people I could reach out to, like Logan. And actually through a network of people, I found out about Jordan. And I remember having a phone call with Jordan before my Posse interview to sort of get the scoop and find out, like, what is it about? What's your experience with Posse? What has it done for you? And through Jordan, I found out it was an incredible organization. And I knew that it was all fate, if you will. So what WSP brought me to Posse, and here I am at the University of Chicago now following my dreams, and I have a really good GPA, which I never would have expected prior to something like WSP.
That's a great story. Master networker, Katie. So, networking with you, Jordan. Jordan, well, let's see. We already kind of heard your background a little bit. Is there a resource that you utilize that we haven't mentioned here? I know that for myself, Service to School was a big resource, and I had a sponsor through them. We can go to you, Jordan, or Alex, if your alarm's fixed. Are you back with us now, or?
Yeah,
Perfect. Yeah, let's go to you, Alex. That'd be great.
As far as my journey to higher education goes, very similar to what Katie was talking about. I'm lucky in a weird sense. My dad was enlisted in the Navy, and then when he graduated, he went to Northeastern, and ended up getting his bachelor's and his master's. So I joined the military with that in mind, like continuously. But going to WSP definitely helped like build my own confidence in schoolwork and remembering how to take notes and doing the refresher on like ninja reading and that kind of stuff. That was awesome. And that's where I met a Vassar Posse guy. He was doing summer classes at Yale, and he had a leg tattoo, which isn't very common. So I asked him, he's a veteran, and then he ended up eating lunch with all the WSP guys, and then kept in touch with him, fell into Posse, and yeah, the rest is history. As far as resources aside from WSP and Posse, there's a ton of stuff out there. One thing that I came to the realization of, though, was that it's almost too much. Pick one or two of these programs, and then other than that, like, you need time to have your life. So that it worked out well. I'd say WSP and Posse, you can't really go wrong. Service to School, I've never worked with it. I've had some friends that are ambassadors for it, and they've got good stuff to say about it. But
Great, Alex. Thank you. Jordan, over to you.
Yeah, so man, to kind of go off the first question, my experience with higher education has definitely had its ups and downs. Like Adam, I live, I come from a family that I was a first generation college student, and so we had the mindset of just go to school to go to school because that's what you did. And so after high school, I went to community college, and I completely bombed because I wasn't focused. I had no direction. But that was in 2008 during the height of the recession, like right when it was kicking off. And so not too long after that, I joined the military. And I didn't know if I wanted to go to school, but for some reason, I guess a part of me thought it was a possibility. So I chose the kicker as my bonus, which I'm so thankful for. and after the military, I ended up in San Diego, where I went to community college part-time for about 4 years. And during that time, I was also working in the Veteran Center. It's where I fell in love with the veteran community, the veteran student community, and where I found my passion of working with fellow veterans in higher education. And that's kind of how I ended up with Posse. Is I knew of Posse and I helped people apply to Posse, but I had totally written off applying because I didn't want to end up in the Northeast. But I think there's another question later about the Posse process, so I'll leave that till later. But yeah, that's kind of my experience so far. I think we mentioned all the major transition programs that I can think of. I've really only been invested in WSP and Posse, so that's all I can really speak on. But like Alexander was saying, there's so many out there. I think part of it is trying to find the program that's going to be right for you.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, there are so many resources out there. Absolutely. Great. And we'll move on to question 2 now. So thinking back, and I'll just pose this to 2 of our panelists. Is there anything you wish you would have taken advantage of that you didn't, or a resource you didn't know exists, but that would have been helpful to you when you were transitioning to college? Adam?
Yeah, I love this question. I don't think it could be asked enough, not in just this setting. Like anytime, me and my friends always, when we used to go to the bars, we used to ask old guys this because it's just such a good life question. But specific to this, I wish I would have applied probably to more scholarships. You know, those like little ones here and there, the $1,000, $2,000 ones. It can get very, very overwhelming, which kind of goes into my second resource I would use more, and it's your gut. Just like kind of like what Alexander was saying, like this, especially online, gets so incredibly overwhelming. And there's actually so many different like resources and things out there you can do. Just follow your gut. Just follow your instinct. It might put you somewhere maybe that didn't work out, but in the end, if you follow your gut, it's gonna be still in an area that you wanted to follow anyway. So you're gonna find out things that you don't like. You're gonna find out things that you do like. So for me, yeah, those are the 2 biggest things probably. The small scholarships, and I would have followed my gut a little more. Thankfully, I did follow my gut with Posse and with WSP, and ended up in great positions with them, with the resources that they gave me. So yeah, for me, those 2 things, definitely.
Fantastic. Alex, can I pose the same questions to you?
Nothing. So I read this one ahead of time and I was thinking like, what would I have done differently? Not necessarily just different resources. I wish I had done another semester in community college, honestly. There's like, for example, the lowest level of math I can take here is calculus, and I've never had exposure to calculus. So that's not really a resource, but that is one thing looking back on. I wish I had taken like an extra summer semester or just something like that to help ease that transition to a traditional school.
Yeah, certainly. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think we as veterans, we love to hit the ground running and to just full charge into something. But it makes sense to take time to take those community college courses. I did the same thing at Tidewater Community College when I got out, and cherished that experience. Some of the best professors, had a great time. I was able to use other resources such as tutors and Khan Academy. And that just really helped prep me for what I was going to face later before I got to Dartmouth. So definitely second that question. Derek, you want to take us to question 3?
Yeah, let me hop in here. So, you know, as you know, I know when I went through Warrior Scholar Project, and one of the things that I experienced that really helped change my relationship to my academic career was realizing that professors actually wanted to talk to me. I treated my professors how I did my commander, and you know, the commander would always post their open door policy on the bulletin board, and you'd just be like, yeah, okay, never gonna use that ever. And that's how I treated my professors when they would say, here are my office hours. I'm like, yeah, never gonna use that ever. And having that experience to kind of break down that 4th wall with the professors and them to say, are you kidding me? We want to talk to veterans. You're adults. Like, you're not like our traditional students, you're more relatable, your life's more exciting, and we're intrigued by what your experiences are. And that really changed and altered just my total experience in higher ed. And as a first generation student, similar to Adam, you know, and Jordan, like all I got was go to school and do well. Okay, how? Right? There was never anything like that. And WSP showed me how to do school, and that completely blew my mind. So I want to ask Katie, because Katie said that you know, she had a great experience at WSP, and I just want you to just pick on like one or two things that was really transformational in your experience with WSP.
Yeah, it's a terrific question. Thanks, Derek. So I would have to say that first thing is just being around other veterans who are interested in higher education. That in itself, just the presence that you experience at WSP was huge for me. Because I remember thinking before my transition, I did not do well in college before I joined the military. It wasn't right for me at the time. So I remember thinking that if I tried it now, what's going to prevent me from having the same issue, right? And going to WSP, I was surrounded by all these other veterans who had the exact same thoughts and sort of apprehension about it, and were curious if they could do well. So then here we are on this campus in this classroom setting with these college professors at an amazing school, and they're challenging us, and we're rising up to the challenge. And I think we were even probably exceeding their expectations with sort of our intellectual curiosity and our sort of innate drive to work together and find these answers and coming up with questions that some of their traditional students, if you will, hadn't even thought of before. And that's when I really realized we have an incredible opportunity to bring something new to the table in higher education. So the presence of other veterans in that setting is huge. And then the second thing I would say is the skills that they provide for you. So things like analytical reading, which is a way of reading a book differently, that I know in the military, we can all relate to this. You're given tons of information and you're expected to regurgitate it on these like boards or, you know, a random test, but nobody really provides you with study skills or how to properly retain this information and absorb it. And so the analytical reading that they teach you about how to really quickly read through a book, find the key points, look at things like the index, the table of contents, find keywords, and how to annotate that was a huge skill for me. And something interesting, I ordered a used book recently for one of my classes, and it arrived, and someone had already gone through analytical reading their own style and annotated it. And I was like, someone else does this. So it's pretty neat to sort of see that in my book. But I hadn't known about it prior to Warrior Project. And so having that experience of a really actual applicable skill to bring to the table at school was massive for me.
So much, Katie. I do want to give Jordan an opportunity to kind of touch upon something that he experienced during his Warrior Scholar Project boot camp that has shown to be fruitful as he left the Warrior Scholar Project boot camp and actually took those skills into his academics.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I think, you know, two of the main ones is one that you were saying, Derek, was the being exposed to professors that are at such a high level that actually want to engage with you, really opened the door of what office hours could look like. And I know for me, our course, some of it was taught by this gentleman by the name of Louis Fraga. And for those that don't know, he was part of the cabinet for Obama. I think he was in his education department, if I'm not mistaken. But just being able to be around someone at that level and exposure of and passion for government and what he does really opened my eyes of what to expect in professors when I got to Wesleyan. And I think that was key. What Katie said was super important. And this may seem odd, but one of the things that I take away the most was the willingness, but the ability to face failure, right? You're exposed in WSP a week of just grind and tons of reading and writing, and sometimes you just don't hit your mark, but that's okay. like you're learning from it. And that's what programs like WSP are for. And I think, you know, when you have those failures, you learn how to adapt your reading style, your study habits, as well as learning what resources you need to access to succeed. And WSP highlighted that so much. I mean, we had our, WSP alumni, which helped us through the process, but you also had faculty and staff that were provided through that week so that you knew programs like the Writing Center existed on the campus when you were going. Like, I can't say how helpful that resource is to succeed in school. You have professionals that's all they do is help people write and rewrite their essays available to you as a student. Like, that's crazy. And just being able to realize that that exists, hands down, saved so many times throughout my education experience.
Thanks so much, Jordan, for sharing. And I'm gonna give it up to Anthony to ask the next question here.
Great. Yeah. And just to build off that for a second, you know, I can't tell you how many times office hours have been key to my experience as a student, and just getting in that personal relationship with a professor that says, "Hey, call me by my first name. You know, don't even call me professor." It's just mind blowing. They're experts. They're leaders in their field, and they want you to be challenged by the material and challenged back. And it's so different from the hierarchy we're used to in the military. And when you go through WSP, you get that kind of information like that from other veterans. So it's a for us bias effect, and you know it's legit. You know it's other people going through similar experiences who've been to other places you've been. So it just hammers it home all the more. So question 4. Similarly to the question before, what interested you most about Posse when you applied? What would you say has been the greatest part about being a Posse Scholar thus far? And how do you think being a Posse Scholar will help you most in the future? Alex, we'll start with you.
I really didn't know what I was getting myself into with Posse, if I'm being completely honest. So I'd say what interested me the most was being a traditional student for 4 years. I've always been interested in business, and I felt like, you know, when you're going down that route, your undergraduate program is really important, and the network that you build from that undergraduate time is also just as important. I had some friends that had transferred in after doing 2 years in community college, and they didn't really feel like they were too involved on their respective campuses. So with Posse, like that really, the opportunity to have that 4 years at one institution and actually, you know, get involved around the campus and just in like normal student activities clubs, that's what really drove me to apply to Posse and go through the whole process.
Awesome. And what do you think? How do you think being a Posse Scholar will help you in the future?
I kind of like run into people from Posse pretty often, so I'd say it's always a talking point, no matter what. Like I guess it's just like an immediate connection. It's easy to go with, and just in general, great people.
It's definitely a strong network, and I have to say, you know, personally, as well, there's so many great Posse veteran scholars, but I've had the pleasure of meeting regular Posse scholars, because the actual foundation started off for not for more civilians, I guess you could say, and they're just some of the best and brightest students, and it's always amazing to meet with them and discuss what they're interested in and how they became Posse scholars. So Adam, can I pose the same question to you?
Yeah, absolutely. This one is pretty simple for me. It's the people. I found that I love working with people, and that's like the driving force for me. I think it's like the driving force behind everything. We all do things for a reason, and it's to affect other people. You know, we want to leave a legacy here. We want we want to do something that has a positive effect for others. And I absolutely needed that. I didn't want to go back to college because when I was first getting out, because I felt like it just wasn't a right fit for me. And I felt like my purpose, I didn't really have a reason why. Then I heard about Posse, and all of a sudden I had a huge reason why. And it was to be amongst, kind of like what Katie was saying, amongst other people that share like that same general drive and that same general direction as you do. And I love that atmosphere. I honestly also absolutely love competition. And honestly, when they were saying like, "Oh, Posse's kind of hard to get into," I'm like, "Oh, but this is like kind of cool. Like, I wanna see if I can get into it. I want to see if I can." And they're like that because they give the same fair opportunity to everyone. But I just wanted to see if I could be a good fit, if I could work well with others, because that's always a challenge too, and it gets you out of your comfort zone. And so that was a big factor for me. Also with this and with WSP, it gives you a chance to tell your story. And I think when it comes to education or a career, I think an overlooked part is your story. Your story is the whole reason why you ended up here. And something like WSP, I got to tell my story. So I don't know if anyone heard, but in the beginning, Derek called me Indy. And that's because I told everyone my career hero is Indiana Jones. Like, I think it would be so cool to be like that. Of course, that's a little romanticized and out there, but I'm really into like nature and outdoors, and like that plays such a big part into where you're going and what you want to do. So tell your story, listen to other people's stories. It's really going to tell you like what's important to you and what's important to your future. And for the Posse program in the future, just those connections and those friendships that I'm going to have is going to be so huge. Like I picture myself, I don't know, out in some jungle somewhere trying to do some environmental research, and I call up one of my Posse member friends who's good at math or who's good at computers, and I'm saying, hey, can you help me build a program to do this, and this to help this person? So that's absolutely huge. The people, the network, I love everything about it.
Yeah, you're building the A team right now, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm getting my team together.
Exactly. Awesome. Great, Derek. You want to take us into the next set of questions there?
Yeah. So I have a really interesting question. For many of us, right? I mean, the fact that we're enlisted service members, and there might be a stigmatism to, we were enlisted, not officers, and so there might be a different level of preconceived notions about what we can bring to the table. And so I want to ask you, two-part question. The first part is, how do you think your enlisted experience, right? Like, what attribute from your enlisted experience has you be successful in higher education, number one? And then number two, what has been your experience like being the elder statesman on campus? I could tell you that the salt and pepper beard was on full effect on my campus. And I could tell you that, I had a lot of friends who were freshmen because they treated me like a cool parent, and they could talk to me about things that they just felt uncomfortable talking to their parents about. And I thought that was a really cool, really great way to kind of connect and be relatable. I treated a lot of my fellow classmates as my soldiers, being an NCO, and so that kind of really created some really cool relationships. I kind of wanted to pitch those two questions for you. Number one, what from your enlisted experience is the attribute that you can tell right away, like, oh yeah, thank goodness I learned this in the military because it's making me successful in college. And then number two, what has been your experience like being a non-traditional student on campus? So I'm kind of open up to the floor. If anybody would like to jump on that question, I'd appreciate it. Go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the first thing that came to mind about, the enlisted part, and it goes back to what I was talking about when it comes to failure, is resiliency. The ability to keep fighting through any obstacles or tasks that get put in your way is such a key attribute from my time in the military that I think carried over to school, that I think is super important. When it comes to being the older student on campus, what I found interesting is so many of the barriers that get put in place between traditional students and veteran students that I've seen anyway, is barriers that we put up ourselves. It's not necessarily the traditional students that are the awkward ones or nervous about getting to know you just because you're older. It's we are the ones like, oh, they're younger than us, they won't understand, or we've had experiences that they haven't gone through. But being at schools like Wesleyan and Chicago and Vassar and Virginia, University of Virginia, like these are amazing students who have gone through their own experiences, which are so unique and that you can learn from so much about. So I think getting over that fear that many of us might have of being that awkward older student and really engaging with our fellow peers and not getting into this habit of calling them kids is super important, because they're at the same college you are. They're going through the same things you are. And they've probably gone through different programs and study habits that you may not have been exposed to just because of their upbringing. And so making those relationships is very important.
Yeah, and I'll just sorry, I was going to piggyback off of Jordan, because I fully agree with everything Jordan said. And by the way, I just love seeing all of you guys. Something interesting as a side note for everyone who's watching is that I've actually been able to meet everyone here through various random veteran opportunities. So like I met Anthony in person at an Ivy League Veterans Council meeting. I met Derek because he and I both became fellows for Warrior Scholar Project. Not only was I in Posse cohort in New York with Alex, but I also then ran into him in Los Angeles at a Student Veterans of America conference. And like I'd said before, it's amazing the Posse network that there is, and how we see each other out. And I feel like part of the legacy of Posse is giving back. And we're all already doing that as Posse scholars and, Warrior Scholar Project attendees here today. We're passing the buck for other veterans, which is great. But back to what Jordan said, I think that there's 3 traits that I personally gained through my service that have made me an way better student than I was the first time around. The first one would be resilience, like Jordan said. Resilience, grit, that ability to sort of persevere, bounce back from anything. Adaptability. I think in the military, we're taught no matter what's thrown at you, you figure out a way to get it done. And you can either do it with a bad attitude and it'll be miserable, or you can try your best to bring a positive attitude to it, kind of buckle down with your shipmates or your fellow soldiers or airmen and just get it done. And so that adaptability is huge, because I'm able to now go to this campus with these incredible students from all over the world and sort of show them that I can adapt, right? And fearlessness is the third thing. I love that I'm the person in class who will raise my hand and ask the dumbest question. And everybody actually is so relieved that I asked it, because a lot of our peers are younger and they might not have come to that place of full self-acceptance yet, where they're confident that their peers won't judge them or, So I love being that person who's like, excuse me, I have no idea what's going on. Can you please explain it? And that's one way I've largely connected with a lot of the traditional students on campus, is I'll ask the questions that many of them are thinking, but are maybe a little bit apprehensive to ask. And then the second thing is, as far as adaptability goes, I love signing up for clubs and organizations on campus, because that's another incredible way to connect with the fellow students. So I do women in business at the University of Chicago, and I have met some incredible young women through that organization. And some of them I'm going to keep my eye out, and one day I might be asking them for a job, because they're inspiring. They know how to get things done. I mean, they're driven, they're ambitious, and they're so intelligent, and they have this natural curiosity. So I personally, even though I'm much older, I'm about to be 37. So I'm a good bit, like I joke with some of them that I could be their parent. I'm like, I could have birthed you. But they love that. I think they kind of find it really cool to like tell their friends, oh yeah, one of my friends is the veteran veteran, you know, or one of the veterans on campus, and they like to hang out. They're always like, yeah, they want to have coffee. So don't be afraid to really get in there and not just fully adhere to this sort of veteran identity, but you as a whole package. And that includes any prior experiences you had before the military, your experiences in the military, and every experience you're going to have. It makes you a comprehensive person, and that's who really brings value to the campus. So don't just think of yourself solely as a veteran. You're so much more than that. But that aspect of your experience is huge in helping you succeed on campus and with your younger peers. Thanks, Derek.
So that's so true, Katie. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I always tell people, I said, listen, you know, when you go onto campus, what that experience of anxiety about being on campus, it's not just you. It's your fellow classmates are having that exact same experience. My suggestion is always identify within yourself something that you connect with, right? So for me, when I got to campus, I felt I was a veteran. Like I connected with that part of my identity. And so I joined the Veterans Club on campus because I needed that kind of connection that was immediate and supportive. And then from there, once I felt grounded in who I was and people that I believed in, then I was able to branch out and go to other organizations and groups and take more risks in terms of just kind of expanding my experience and expanding my identity as to who I am. So Katie, truly signing up for clubs and organizations, and you don't have to sign up. You can just go to their, general body meetings and just listen in and things of that nature. I do want to give it over to Anthony now because for the respect of time, we do want to get some of our questions from our audience posed to our panelists. So Anthony, if you'd like, ask a few of our audience's questions, please.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. And we're going to try and get through as many as we can. I'll ask our panelists if you please try and be concise and straight to the point with your answers so we can get through as many as we can out of respect for our audience. So for any panelists who would like to answer this, what advice would you give to vets looking into school right now who have reservations maybe because of COVID and the fact that a lot of learning has moved on to a virtual world and it's now online?
I'll take this one. I know that it seems daunting and a little bit disappointing to try to take on higher education through this virtual platform. I know that when we envision ourselves at school, many of us think of the whole campus experience, right? Like walking around among the buildings and, going to physical professors' office hours. But I would say this, do not be intimidated. You're still getting an amazing education, and your level of interaction with your peers is fully up to you. Something you can always take advantage of is the various chat platforms. And there's always chats in the Zoom room in my classes. Feel free to reach out to your students, put yourself out there and say, let's create a study group. Let's have Saturday morning virtual coffee and do this or that. So even though there are its own set of challenges, like technology can be an issue, you're still getting a wonderful college experience, and you still have every opportunity to create that sort of peer-based environment. And you do get to go to office hours. It's just going to be virtual. But take advantage of all of those things, even though it's a virtual platform. Sign up for office hours and come up with your own group schedule so that you can simulate that campus experience as much as possible.
Great answer. Thank you, Katie. Let's see. Next question we have here. How did you feel connected to your college, and were there social supports to help in the campus to connect, and what were they? And I think Derek touched on this a little bit with different groups. Or was there anything else that wasn't mentioned perhaps that helped you feel connected to campus? And again, open to any panelist.
Yeah, I would say, so one of the clubs I joined was, it's a global markets group. And it was kind of a time commitment because the first semester you're doing it, you're with like the group for, I don't know, 8 to 10 hours a week. You've got 2 hours of class. And then on top of that, you have like a little side project to work on. And then you go to different fund meetings. So I would say maybe some more of the technical, not traditional like hobbies. I mean, I did the ski and snowboard club last year, which was a lot of fun, but you'd go skiing, or they would do like I don't know, like a happy hour or something. And that was the extent of it. It wasn't the same experience.
Cool, cool. All right, so let's see. Third question here. What misconceptions about school did you have that proved to be wrong? Maybe Adam or Jordan for this one?
Yeah, I can take this. I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier about this perception of your peers. You know, coming to a school like Wesleyan, um, you're it's a school where it's like $70,000 a year for tuition and housing and all that, and like 65% of the school can pay that without any scholarship. You know, so you already have this mindset of who you're going to be around, and you're going to schools with Kennedys and the Bushes, and the list goes on, and you're like, what the hell am I going to have in common with these students? And I think what broke it immediately was getting here and just realizing that they're just people too, and they're students struggling through the same things you are, and it breaks down a lot of the things. Also, one of the things I hear, when I was a Posse ambassador about people interested in the program, a lot of the schools that we work with happen to be like liberal arts schools. And so veterans have this image of what a liberal arts school is, and oh, they're going to have these liberal stances and I can't be myself. Is it, if I'm a conservative student or person with conservative views, am I going to be accepted? Are they even going to take a look at me as a student? And realizing that they're bringing you there because you have different views. That's why they want you. And I think those are the two biggest misconceptions.
Hey, thanks for that, Jordan. So I want to pose a couple other questions. So the first one is, what is your proudest moment thus far in your education journey? And then the next question is, what is the last bit of advice that you want our attendees to walk away with from this Q&A? So I'll state it one more time. The first question is, what's your proudest moment thus far in your education journey? And what's the last piece of advice that you want our attendees to walk away with at the end of this Q&A?
I'll start, and then I assume more people will want to answer, but I will say this: my proudest moment was probably after my very first quarter. It was the roughest quarter of my whole life. I mean, I swear that math class I took was the hardest, harder than anything I ever did in the military in 10 years of service. So at the end of that quarter, when I think I managed a 3.3 GPA that one quarter, I was like so proud of myself, because it was such a struggle. It was like being in the trenches, and I was able to succeed by utilizing my resources, asking for help when I needed it, and leaning on my fellow peers, whether they were traditional students or veterans. So that was a big moment for me. And then my last bit of advice is, what I'm excited about is entities like Warrior Scholar Project and Posse working together. And there's so many incredible organizations out there. For anyone who doesn't know, Next Step Inbound is another great resource. I don't know if you already talked about that, but Next Step Inbound, you can go to the website. I can put it in the chat in a little while, but they're literally just set up, and there's different campus ambassadors, like representatives at the different schools that are currently veterans attending top universities, and they want to help you get in. So they're there to answer your questions and help you, and they'll guide you towards things like Warrior Scholar Project and Posse. So utilize your resources. Don't be afraid to sign up for Warrior Scholar Project, and don't be afraid to reach out to someone from Posse and ask them about Posse. Come talk to myself, talk to Jordan, talk to Anthony, talk to anyone. Our wonderful, like the staff there, like Nicolette and Eric and just everyone. I could go on and list 100 people, but use those resources. Everyone wants to help you. They want veterans, and they're doing so many great things for us. So don't be afraid to ask for that help and pass the buck. Tell other people about it.
Katie. Alex, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, I guess like for starters, also feel free to reach out to me. One thing I remember like having an issue with was reaching out to complete strangers. So if you ever want to like talk to anybody, you can ask me a million questions. You don't even have to say, hey, just send me a message on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, doesn't matter. I've got something else, but I forgot about it. So no.
We'll come back to you, Alexander. Don't worry about it. We'll come back to you, Alex. Adam, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, for sure. Feel free to reach out to me as well. But my proudest moment was actually this past semester, right after my first office hours with my first professor. It was the first week, and right after that office hour ended, I was like so proud of myself because that's something I would have never done my first go around in college, and I think it contributed to my failure that first time. And after that first meeting, I felt so good. I continued meeting more and more, and it just felt good to actually like do things, start off the right way and kick it off the right way. So that was huge. And that's all attributed to programs like WSP and Posse, who told me, you know, do these things, use your resources, go to office hours. So that's all attributed to that. And then just advice, do something out of your wheelhouse. Do something, take a class if you can your first year, so it's a little bit of easier class. Take a class that like you probably would have never taken before. Just if you can, you know, if you don't have a certain schedule you need to stick to, if you can, because you'll never know what you're going to find out. It's super interesting. And when I applied to WSP, I actually applied for the STEM program at first, but I ended up doing the humanities, and it was awesome. I still have the book, which I'm still trying to get through. I still, you know, it was out of my wheelhouse. I had no idea what was going on, but I walked away with it with more than I could have ever thought of. So definitely that.
Awesome, Adam. Thanks so much. So one last, Jordan, Alex, if you're ready to come back, we'll have that. And then Jesse Cicetti, who's the Director of Outreach for Warrior Scholar Project, will say a few words to kind of wrap things up. But Jordan, then Alex.
I would say my proudest moment was, it's hard, but I would say the one that sticks out to me the most was my summer after freshman year, where I interned. It was kind of a dual thing where I was accepted to a leadership academy through CAUSE, which is the Center for Asian Americans United for Self-Empowerment in Los Angeles. And during that summer, I also interned for Congresswoman Grace Napolitano out of LA. And just being exposed to so many leaders within this Asian American community that I didn't know about or wasn't exposed to before truly transformed how I not only identified myself, but how I looked at the community as a whole, especially in California. And with that, I would say my advice would be, don't be afraid to apply for whether that be programs or services or scholarships. Like the worst that can happen is you get a no. You never know what program you're going to get a yes to and which one of those opportunities are going to totally transform how you view yourself and the trajectory of where you're going to go to next. So apply.
Thanks, Jordan. I appreciate that. Alex, did you get your thought? You found it?
Yeah, sorry, lost my train of thought there. Yeah, one thing I would say is don't let your friends talk you down, and not in a bad way. Like, not that my friends held me back in any way, but it just seemed like everybody doubted certain opportunities that are out there for veterans. So just try to shake off the negative energy as much as possible, because it's going to be frustrating. I mean, I've tried, like you're just going to have to roll with the blows, but try to focus on the uplifting opportunities and keep in touch with everybody for sure.
Thanks, Alex. And so now it's my great pleasure to introduce Jesse Cicetti, who's the Director of Outreach for Warrior Scholar Project. Jesse?
Hey, thank you very much, Derek. I just wanted to come on and say thank you to our panelists, Jordan, Adam, Alex, and Katie. It's always great to see you guys and to have you do the amazing things that you do. Anthony and Derek, amazing job moderating. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Max and Eric from the Posse Foundation and the team there at Posse to work to make a better way for all of those involved in veterans that want to go and succeed in higher learning. And also to Whitney, and of course, Ryan Pavel, our awesome CEO, who leads us in the right directions to get this in the challenging times. I just want to say thanks to everybody that tuned in and watched. And then I'm sure that it wouldn't be fair, since how this was a co-event, if I didn't turn it over to Eric to give his final remarks, and thanks again to everybody.
Thanks, Jesse. Thank you everyone for being here, for listening, our panelists, our co-moderators. You continue to impress me. I really appreciate you all taking the time out of your day to share just all these incredible tidbits of knowledge and wisdom and experience that I know will be able to be passed on to others. And this was recorded, and so it'll be able to be shared out, not with just those who are here live with us, but with others down the line. So thank you so much. Jesse and I have been both dropping more information about Posse, about WSP, about other resources that were mentioned. As everybody said, don't hold yourself back, apply. We're all here to help you through this process. And so we all look forward to connecting with you all more soon. But thank you again to our panelists. Continue to be impressed. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Get those applications in. Looking forward to seeing you all this summer. Bye.